Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Welcome to Gerard Batten, leader of UKIP. We've been talking to all the parties about the local and European elections. People will probably know what your position is as far as Brexit is concerned, but what's the point of anyone voting UKIP in the locals?
Well, I think we're the only party that's actually got a clear position on Brexit, apart from the Liberal Democrats, of course, who want to remain. And we are the party of leave. Why vote for UKIP in a local election? There's two reasons. First of all, because in a local election it's about local policies, it's about electing a local councillor to represent you on those local issues, which will vary across the country depending where you are. But secondly, it's an opportunity to send a message to our MPs that people expect the referendum to be honoured and they want to leave, and they can do that by voting for UKIP.
All right, well, we've had a look at some of the policies that you're putting forward in the local elections, and perhaps one of the most eye-catching is UKIP believes that access to local services should be prioritised for veterans and local people with a proven link to their local area. What's the problem you're trying to solve here?
Because we have vast amounts of people coming into the country now who are entitled to the same benefits in housing, etc., as citizens, what we're saying is that citizens should be prioritised. So people who've lived in an area for a long time, or they have a long association with it, or they're children of people who live there, and veterans, we've got many people sleeping on the streets, as you're well aware. Lots of them are ex-servicemen and women. They should be prioritised.
But they are prioritised, Gerard Batten. Councils already look at whether a homeless person has a local connection to the area when deciding whether or not they have to house them. So this is links based on living or working in the area, close family in the area, or other special reasons. They also require a proven link to the local area to be established before putting someone on a list for social housing. So I ask you again, what problem are you trying to solve?
Because and I've had people come into my office who their children have moved out temporarily to live somewhere else. When they come back, they find that they're not qualified as having a link because they moved out of the borough, or people have moved out of the borough by the local council into a temporary accommodation, try to come back in and they can't get permanent accommodation.
So those are the people you think are being excluded from services at the moment, and your policy is designed to help. There doesn't seem to be anything that you've said so far that differs from what is being done in practice by councils.
Well, I just explained to you.
There may be exceptions, of course, but policy-wise there's nothing different.
Well, we want it applied properly, and we want people who've lived in an area for a long time, a long association with it, to be given priority. This is one of the problems, of course,
according to the LGA.
This is one of the problems, of course, with the open borders with the European Union, is that people who've never paid tax, have no association with the place, come in and get the same priority as other people.
So it's about people coming from abroad. It isn't borne out, in fact, Gerard Batten, if you look at what the local government association says when it comes to veterans, for example. All councils have signed the Voluntary Armed Forces Covenant and are committed to honouring their obligations to those who have served their country. You're putting up a straw man here.
Well, it doesn't actually seem to be working, because I talk to a lot of homeless people on the streets as I go about. There's more and more of them everywhere. I pass 4 or 5 on my way to the office every day and talk to them. And we have now vast amounts of people sleeping rough, and I think that we have to try to do something about it. And what we're saying in our manifesto is that we would try to prioritise helping those people.
But, as I say, they are prioritised. Councils state very clearly on all of their literature that they prioritise people with a local link, they prioritise people who've lived in the area for a certain amount of time, and they prioritise veterans. Armed Forces Covenant states it. So it is for you just about excluding people who are immigrants from abroad?
No, it's about applying that, because if you talk to people in localities, they'll tell you it isn't happening. And what we're saying in our manifesto, if you vote for us, you're saying you want it to happen.
Right.
So if it's on their statute book and if it's supposed to happen, then let's make it happen. And local councils elected under the UKIP banner will try to do that.
Right. So you are going to do something markedly different. How will you enforce it?
Well, when you vote in an election like this, you're very often voting for what you want to happen, not necessarily what can happen, because local council have been denuded of power. That started under Mrs Thatcher. So what we're saying is when you vote, when people go out and vote in an election like this, and very often in other elections, they're very often voting for what they would like to happen rather than what they realistically know a local councillor can enforce. And don't forget, we are not controlling any councils, so we're going to have even less power than people that do. But it is an opportunity for voters to say this is what we would like to happen, what we expect to happen.
Let's have a look at the European elections. It all looked very different in 2014. Your former leader, Nigel Farage, is now leading the Brexit party, newly formed, getting an awful lot of attention. 10 former UKIP MEPs now sit for that Brexit party. Why?
Well, don't forget, I lost... A lot of those walked away from UKIP before I took over.
They didn't, actually. When I've looked at the dates, at least 5 or 6 of them have gone since you became leader.
And you just said 10, so at least half of them have gone already.
Still, why have they left UKIP, the one since you became leader?
Well, that's quite an interesting question, because I think that at least 4 of our MEPs told me when I took over the party back in February 2018 that it was finished, it was over, it was done for. So I said, OK, if you feel that way, give up your seat, hand it back to UKIP, and we'll have somebody that does believe in our party and it's not done for. Those people thought they had a better chance with Nigel Farage, which is why they've gone off. And you will notice that only 2 of them have actually been selected to sit for the Brexit Party. The other 8 have not.
Well, just to cite at least 3 of them, and they've only left on the 15th of April, so well into your leadership, and they've actually specifically said it's your leadership and the direction you've taken the party in is that the reason that they have left and joined the Brexit Party. Jill Seymour, Jane Collins and Margot Parker.
I'm so glad you've asked me about those ladies, because the day before we announced the seats for the European elections this time, they were all enthusiastically thinking that they were going to be put to the top of the list. They were sending me nice texts and email messages, and 2 of them gave a £1,000 deposit to the campaign. So I think it's just a question of sour grapes.
Why weren't they at the top of the list?
Because the party felt, and it wasn't down to me personally, there was a panel of selections, and it was felt that these people hadn't honoured the commitment that they'd made to the party in 2013.
Well, that's not what Jane Collins said. She has cited, well, you know, let's take it in good faith for the moment. We've heard what you had to say as the reason. She has said it's down to one of the candidates on your list who's been pretty controversial and talked about, Carl Benjamin. But her quote is, to have people like him on the list for the party is something I find disgusting. And to hear Gerard Batten on national TV yesterday defending this man's use of rape as satire made me sick to my stomach.
First, that was Jane Collins, was it? Jane Collins was very, very keen on being top of the list. If we'd have put... Let me finish. I will do, if you'd allow me to. If she was top of the list, she'd now be defending the party and the things that I've done.
You don't know that, of course, do you?
Well, I can be 100% certain of it. Now, if, for example, also Margot Parker, not less than a month ago, was on a platform with me and Carl Benjamin.
All right, well, hang on. What about Mike Hockham? He's still there. He is a candidate, and he's made the following statement on Facebook. I was greatly disturbed to hear members of my party trying to pass off offensive comments on rape as free speech and satire, which is what you have done. In my opinion, these comments are neither, and I condemn them without reserve. So, putting aside the argument that you are saying they weren't at the top of the list, this is somebody still in the party who is a candidate, and he thinks it's disgraceful. And
I said to Mike, you've made a knee-jerk reaction to what's in the media without looking at what was actually said. And the next time, actually look at the facts behind the issues. When what Carl Benjamin was doing was actually... He wasn't making a joke about rape. He was making a remark of non-intent, because he knew that that would goad somebody into complaining, because they complain about everything. And he's trying to campaign to retain free speech on the internet and on the alternative media.
He said he wouldn't even rape a Labour MP. And it does then beg the question, who would you rape?
Well,
how on earth can you make comments like that and think that they're not serious and disgraceful?
He is running a free speech forum, and he had an issue with that MP because when in Parliament Philip Davis, a Tory MP, tried to get a committee to look at the problem of male suicide, which is a very big issue because 80 or 90% of suicides are men, she was sneering and laughing at it. And she was also trying to close down free speech on the internet.
Firstly, you've done what you've done all the way through this interview, which is completely misrepresent that. You are just lying to people.
It isn't. I'm not
lying. But the other problem
because that's what happened.
Is that you don't seem to think for a minute that there is a problem with one of your candidates making jokes about rape.
It wasn't a joke,
We've got a serious problem with violence against women and girls in this country. And you think that it's OK for him to make rape threats on social media?
Because he wasn't making a threat, and he's actually suing people now who misrepresented him in the media.
Is it responsible for a political candidate to talk in those terms?
Exactly. These quotes, the things that he did say, were from years gone by when he was on a free speech forum.
All right.
And now he's an election candidate.
Let's talk about some of the other things he said, because in one video that I've seen, he uses the N-word. Is that funny?
He was using that against white supremacists, and he was goading them, so he wasn't using it.
Because you said you've defended him on the basis of satire. He's a comedian. He's a funny guy. Is it funny to use the N-word in any circumstances?
He was using that against white supremacists. I'm asking you a question.
Is it funny?
I don't think it's particularly funny.
Right, you don't think it's funny, you don't think it's
satirical. But then I don't think a lot of the comedians on BBC are funny either.
Fine, but is there anything that he can say that is still acceptable to you? Is there any line that he can't cross?
Yes, of course, but he hasn't...
What is it?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and come up with umpteen examples of things that somebody might say that hasn't said.
Well, what is it? I mean, if he said something satirical, in your view, offensive to others about veterans or the poppy, Would that be defendable?
You're sitting here surmising on things that he hasn't said and has got no intention of saying.
No, I'm trying to ask you where your line is, because there's obviously got to be a line where you don't think there is a line to be drawn. You say it's free speech to talk about rape or use the N-word in whatever circumstance. So I'm trying to ascertain with you, is there a line beyond which a candidate for UKIP can't cross?
Yes, of course.
And what is
but
it?
when I see it, I'll let you know, because I'm not going to surmise on something that might or might not happen.
Well, you've talked about veterans, and you feel very strongly about veterans. So if someone said something, if Carl Benjamin said something equivalent to using N-word about veterans and the poppy, would you defend him?
Well, he isn't going to do that, is he?
Ah, so that is defendable.
So why would he?
That you wouldn't defend.
Well, there are lots of things I wouldn't defend. But I'm not going to sit and surmise on 101 or 1,000 things that might happen that have never happened and not going to happen.
What if the veteran happened to hold a different point of view? What if the veteran happened to be a female Labour MP who had something to say that he didn't agree with? What if the veteran happened to be from an ethnic minority background?
There are plenty of them.
Because he seems to think it's OK to make rape threats and to use offensive language about people from ethnic minority backgrounds.
And I'd be careful, because he's already suing people now who said that he did. So, and this is now under legal consideration.
You're not threatening on television.
Perhaps
he should be
threatened anybody for
Perhaps
rape.
your party
and
should
if
be
you
careful
say that, you might end up getting sued as well. You've said it live on television.
I think you've just shown to this country what sort of a person you are and what sort of party you stand for. This is the one time that I actually agree with Nigel Farage. It just looks like a group of extremists and thugs.
Of course you want to say that. You're our political opponents, you're our enemies, and you're sitting there furiously voting
Gerard Batten, why are you defending him? What's the benefit to UKIP? I mean, is he worth it, this guy?
I tell you what,
you've lost good MEPs as far as your party is concerned.
Right. We lost people with no loyalty to the party.
Right. Is it worth it? Is he worth it?
Well, you see, now, when we were thinking about who we're going to have as our MEP candidates, we knew that we're not going to get a fair crack of the whip from the mainstream media. We know we're going to be relentlessly attacked, like we're being now. So we looked at people who came to us, actually. We didn't recruit them. They came to us and said they think that the issues of free speech, etc., are very important and they'd like to join us.
All right.
And they've joined us. And they have access to hundreds of thousands of millions of people, especially on younger people.
I'll come to that. And you think that'll translate into votes, do you? I'll come to Stephen about that. Well, will that translate into votes? I mean, if that's the defence, they're going to hand us, as Gerard Batten, thousands of YouTube followers.
Well, if the polls are to be believed, no. I mean, the slight oddity of this interview, right, is actually UKIP have become a party for the tweets, which has died in the streets. They are fighting two-thirds of the seats they fought last time, they're not even standing in. So quite clearly, this Faustian pact they have, I mean, at least Faust got something for his soul. It doesn't seem that they will.
We're actually fighting almost 3 times more than the seats we did last time when there was a local election, because I took over a party in collapse. Right. That party is now thriving, and it's fighting 1,400 seats instead of the 500.
We could debate the thriving. Michelle, yes.
If I just try and add a slight bit of balance somehow, I think that there is an element of a point to some of the things that you talk about, so some of your policies, in the sense of there's a great number of people that share the concerns that you articulate. So there are, whether it's right or wrong, whether the facts support it or not, there is a wide perception amongst various people that, for example, veterans are not looked after, that, for example, housing's that...
I mean, well, I'm just saying. We've talked about concerns that this party is raising. Is that a concern that is widely shared?
But if you let me finish, so if you let me finish,
I think it's a perfectly reasonable question.
So what I would say is, so people have the concerns that your party originally tapped into, but I think what you're doing now is you've gone beyond articulating in a certain fashion a concern that someone may see as genuine, and you've crossed into a territory which is, I probably will offend you, but I don't take UKIP seriously. And the reason I don't take you seriously is because where I think that you started representing people's valid concerns, certain people's valid concerns, I think you've crossed a line into irrelevance for the broader part of that group, based on the people that you're associating with, based on you not condemning. It's not acceptable to call people the N-word. It's not acceptable to jerk. And I know you're saying it's not a jerk, it's a non-intentional comment, but it's not acceptable.
Whether we're irrelevant or not will be decided by the voters on the 2nd of May and the 23rd of May. And last weekend, I was the only politician to turn out to support a meeting of 6,000 or 7,000 veterans in London, and they were all pretty pleased with what I was doing.
We are going to have to finish there just because we are almost...
Only because the mainstream media relentlessly attack us.
We're getting towards the end of our programme. But Gerard Batten, thank you very much for coming in.